It's crazy. Crazy. It is crazy, but no complaint.
Jaluni, you're in Sweden, right?
No, I'm in France. Sorry, I need to update it. I need to update you on that as well.
In Prague.
In France,
In
France. Sorry.
France. In France.
Yes. Yeah, I'm doing my PhD here. I'm permanently in France. I will
In
be in
Paris.
France in the future. Yes. Where the weather is not as good as you have it there, down there.
Where in France are you?
I'm sorry.
In what
He's in
city?
Paris.
Oh,
Sorry,
Paris.
I can't hear you.
Okay, he's in Paris. No, the city you are.
Yes, Paris. I am in Paris. Sorry.
A couple of years ago, I did a course at Sorbonne.
Oh,
It was a 1 week course during summer when I was living in Madrid, and it was really good. It was really good. Actually, I would like to live in Paris if it weren't so expensive.
yeah.
Yeah.
Come visit me.
Oh, interesting roommate.
Yeah.
I got
Come
4
visit me.
dogs, 3 cats to take with me.
Trust me, we have a student community that's more than welcome.
Maybe, let me see.
Yes. Let's see.
Sure, this arrived. Oh, it's that period of the day when we leave work and we sit on the couch to read the students' works. And then we sleep on top of students' works,
Yeah.
right? And then we drool on top of students' works because we're sleeping. And then here comes your dog, and your dog eats your students' works and takes your students' work. So you have to give them A because you didn't have the paper to read. So it was awesome.
They
Big
actually
storm, and
happened to
nobody
me.
wants to read your paper.
No, like it's a joke to you, but it actually happened to me. One of my paper that I hand in to my teacher, her dog just peed on it. And when we
Wow.
got it back, it was like yellow.
I love these rebel pets.
Mm.
And then I tell them, if I don't work, I cannot buy you food.
By the way,
And
if
I
I may ask,
understand.
what are you working as, Beto, now?
What?
What are you working now? You've finished your PhD, right?
I am working for the internationalization of my university. I am in a
Oh,
postdoc um, scholarship. Actually, it's a fellowship. And then you work like administrative internationalization
mm,
tasks.
mm,
And you also research this. The presenter has arrived.
yeah, solid.
And this is pretty much this. This is why I'm going to this panel with Sylvia because of higher education spaces. Hello, Gladys.
Pretty cool.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you. How's it going, everybody?
Hi, Gladys.
We-
Hello,
Is it
everyone.
good evening or good
Where
morning?
are you from, Gladys?
Hi, I'm currently located in San Diego.
Oh, San Diego. Good.
Yes. Where's everybody else at currently?
No. Well, I'm
Um,
from Denmark, Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Copenhagen. Wow,
Toronto, Canada.
Canada.
Rio de Janeiro,
Yeah, sorry. Hi,
Yeah.
I'm in France.
Brazil.
Good evening,
Hello,
Gladys.
Brazil.
Nice to see you all again. Sylvia, Jalun,
Hello, hello,
Lala,
Andrew.
and
It's been a
Dick.
while. How you doing?
Hello, hello.
Hi, hi.
It's so
Good.
nice to see everyone.
Well, thank you,
Nice shirt you
everyone.
have on.
Yeah. Should we wait another 2-3 minutes and then start?
Yes, other 5 minutes to see if more people arrive. Hello, Vesela.
And see her.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Vesela. Now I can also see you.
Yeah. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, that's
I just want to remind everyone that the session is going to be recorded and we are going to post on our YouTube channel. I don't know if you have already seen it. We also have Vesela's, Andrew's, Jaldun's, and Dirk's presentation in there on our YouTube. And I believe Ladance is also on YouTube channel.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes. And also, what else? Let me see. We also have I'm going to keep coordinating Talking Alienation seminars, but Sylvia is going to join and to help me with this task. She's going to aid me with the research, the papers. Sorry about that, the noise. And I don't know. Gladys, you work at the University of California, San Diego.
Correct. I'm an administrator there. Yes.
Oh, nice. And what do you do? What subjects do you teach?
I'm an administrator. I'm in academic affairs. So I've been in academic
Academic.
affairs. Yes. Yeah. So I've been here for about
Okay.
6 years now. Yes. I was
Nice. We're going to have a lot to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. Many things to talk about of academic affairs. So I definitely, have seen the pros and cons of the faculty life. Absolutely. So
Beautiful.
if there's anything else before we get started.
Okay. We're just giving a few more minutes to see if more people arrive, if more people come, and then when we start, you will have 40 minutes to present. Okay. I believe you are able to present.
Okay.
Let me see. If you want, do you have a presentation?
I do. Do you want me to check if I can share my screen?
Okay, could you try sharing your screen, please, just to check?
No, I am not able to. It says sharing is not turned on.
Wait just a moment then. Let me see here just a moment. Good. Now you're able to. Could you try again, please?
Okay, can everybody?
Yes,
Great.
now I see it.
Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and leave it on unless you'd like me to take it off until.
No, 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 no. You can leave it on.
Okay.
It's 7:06 here in Brazil right now.
Okay.
Let me just.
Yeah, we could wait a couple more minutes. Up to you, Humberto.
Perfect, perfect. And where are you from originally?
Originally born in Mexico. I've lived in California my entire life. I've been in higher education my entire life, it feels like. I had a minor gap for 2 years. In those 2 years, I actually worked at UCLA. So I never left the university. Still, always been at the university level. And so the only time I also left California was when I went to grad school on the East Coast. So I was in Boston, Chicago, DC for grad school for 2 years, and then came back to San Diego for my PhD. And so I finished my PhD almost 2 years ago in 2023. So this research is an extension of my dissertation. Yes.
Beautiful experience. Very nice. Very nice. I've met so many Mexicans, and when I was in Brasilia, here in Brazil, we had this Latin American meeting on sociology, and there were these people from the UNAM
Sí.
and also from Puebla, and they were amazing. Such happy people and so intelligent. I mean,
Oh,
Mexico has brilliant sociologists and brilliant philosophers. It's amazing. It's amazing the knowledge that Mexico creates. I really like that.
yeah.
I'm very Latino, I have this Latino thing. What can I do?
I love that. I actually have a Mexico City trip planned in 2 weeks and hopefully going back there in April. And I actually want to be going to UNAP as well. And, it would be great to have some sort of collaboration there as well. So I definitely, want to expand my research agenda as well. So definitely, opening up that pathway.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, it's 10 minutes past. Please, Gladys, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. And now you have the floor.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you all. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. Well, wonderful. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, and nice to meet you. Thank you for being here today. Once again, my name is Gladys Leyva, and I'm very, very excited to share my research with you all. Which is titled Breaking Barriers, Building Bridges, and Navigating the Professoriate, Lived Experiences as Testimonios of Women Faculty of Color in Academia. So this research explores women faculty of color in academia, particularly how they navigate systemic barriers and the emotional labor required in academic spaces. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. And so here we have just a brief introduction, a little bit of what I initially had submitted in the abstract for this seminar. And so, as I mentioned, this research explores the lived experiences of the women faculty of color. Specifically, it explores it through the lens of both Gloria Anzaldua's conocimiento, her theory of conocimiento, as well as specifically, distinctively, unlike my original research, this is through the lens of alienation theory. And so this study examines how institutional racism and marginalization fosters the sense of detachment and the exclusion for these women. and how alienation theory highlights the psychological and emotional disconnection experienced by individuals when they are deprived of these very meaningful connections and the agency and the sense of belonging, and the issues that are prevalent in the academic journeys of the women. And so I use the methodology of testimonios, which are the foregrounds of the personal and political narratives of marginalized communities. And this research captures the firsthand accounts of essentially 8 women faculty of color. And so the testimonios essentially, they will illustrate, or they do illustrate, the challenges that institutional norms mark the boundaries and how they negotiate their roles within the academic spaces, and how alienation manifests through isolation from colleagues and the exclusion of leadership opportunities, and this invisible curriculum that they go through. So let's move forward. So why does this research, why does it matter? So women faculty of color, they face significant challenges in academia, including racial and gender bias, invisibility, and the emotional burden of emotional labor. These challenges often go unrecognized. Institutional policies, tenure and promotion decisions, and the daily professional interactions. So by applying Gloria Anzaldua's conocimiento framework, I aim to amplify their voices, and using the methodology of testimonio, actually, I provide this platform, and I use their narratives, to bring their lived realities into a broader amplification. So the problem. This study seeks to document the testimonios of these women and their experiences of resilience and resistance. Research shows that faculty of color are more likely to engage in mentorship and diversity-related service, yet this labor is undervalued, specifically in tenure decisions, promotion, merit advancement. I've seen this firsthand on my job that I do day to day. Moving forward, some research questions that I probed. So some statistics that also I've seen in the data collection, in the literature. There was a survey in 2021 that found 65% of women faculty of color reported experiencing racial or gender bias in their departments, actually, and it actually impacted their job satisfaction and their retention. And so the key findings and the key themes, they do answer most of these research questions, or they do touch upon them, specifically the strategies of what these women do to address the challenges, and how to address adversity, as well as reflecting upon their agency and the conocimiento within the testimonios, as well as, what are the structures and the mechanisms that they face in terms of their advancement and their mobility as they move forward in their professional trajectory, in their professoriate, right? So we'll see that as we advance. So literature review. So this study applies, as I mentioned, 2 frameworks, both Gloria Anzaldua's conocimiento as well as alienation theory. So conocimiento provides a pathway to understanding resilience and transformation. And this emphasizes how women faculty of color cultivate agency through this very critical self-reflection, collective resistance. Mind you, Anzaldua's conocimiento is 7 stages. So it definitely required rapport, you know, with myself and the participants. So I'll dive into that a little bit later. Just wanted to mention that really quick. And so with alienation theory, as you may know, it explains the emotional and psychological disconnections that individuals face in environments that exclude them, particularly within institutions that were not originally designed for them, and designed for their exclusion, designed for their inclusion. Women of color in academia, the ivory tower, that's definitely wasn't designed for them, right? And they're now facing those repercussions. Women faculty of color often experience this type of alienation in academia through isolation, exclusion from leadership opportunities, invisibility in curricula, as I mentioned earlier, and institutional decision making, right? Studies have gone on to prove that, document that. So by bridging these 2 theories, this study frames that the lived experiences of women as both a site of struggle and a space of transformative resistance, right, is very significant. And so, as I mentioned, Conocimiento provides this pathway of understanding the resilience and transformation, while alienation theory explains the emotional and psychological disconnection. And so women faculty of color are able to, are able to not really move forward with this invisible curricula and the institutional decision making. And so we'll go ahead and move forward with the next, which is the theoretical framework, more of the 7 stages of the conocimiento, actually. So next, as I mentioned, the 7 stages provides illumination into how the women faculty of color resist this type of systemic oppression, and they help reclaiming agency, right, into academia. And they also provide assistance in alternative ways of knowing and alternative ways of feeling, specifically in your body, your mind, and your spirit. This is what makes this theoretical framework so unique and so special, and so it's so unique. You're tapping into like this like higher consciousness, right? And this is why also I feel that the participants were able to connect with it so well, and so so much into their inner emotions, I believe, and were able to captivate such rich findings, actually. And so in terms of moving more into the macro, so there are some intersections with the literature in terms of gender, race, and emotional labor. So the research does indicate that there are they are disproportionately tasked with, as I mentioned, invisible labor, such as mentoring students of color and serving on diversity committees, but often without institutional recognition. Studies also show that women faculty of color experience significant pay gaps and are underrepresented in leadership roles, reflecting broader systemic inequities in academia. These intersecting barriers impact their career trajectories, mental health, and job satisfaction, reinforcing the need for institutional reforms. So in line with my Chicana feminist epistemology, I decided to use the practice of testimonio for this research. So what is testimonio? Testimonio is a powerful tool for centering the voices of marginalized communities. It challenges dominant narratives and presents firsthand experiences of legitimate forms of knowledge. Rather than viewing these testimonials as anecdotal, this research treats them as critical qualitative data that reveal systemic issues in academia. So now in terms of my methodology, so this study employs a testimonial methodology, as I mentioned, where participants shared their personal narratives as an act of resistance. I was able to conduct in-depth testimonials with 8 women faculty of color across different academic disciplines and institutional types. Their testimonials provide deep insights and into both their struggles and the ways they build bridges for future generations. I was able to use purposive sampling. I interviewed 4 associate professors, 4 full professors, and this was conducted at a 4-year public university. And here's a table of the oops about that of my sample. And let's move on to the findings and the key themes. Okay, here are the findings and the key themes. So here are some of the key themes. The 3 main key themes are navigating bias and discrimination, second, emotional labor and resilience, and then you have conocimiento as resistance. So here we have navigating bias and discrimination. So women faculty of color navigated standards of academic legitimacy. So participants reported experiencing racial and gendered microaggressions, exclusion from leadership and decision-making roles, the pressure to overperform to gain legitimacy. Some example quotes I have listed here from the testimonios, as well as, I constantly have to justify my expertise, even though, I have X amount of, citations, I have X amounts of research papers, I have X amounts of, anything, right? It's constantly trying to talk over my male colleagues. It's never enough. Because they just constantly need to just be better than everyone else because they're the women faculty of color in the room in their department. And it's, it's exhausting for them. And it was very disheartening and demoralizing to go through these testimonios with them, because it was it's actually a set of 2 testimonios where we sat down, tried to establish this type of rapport, right? Go through this set of stages of conocimiento with each of the participants, and go through, me as a nepantlera, guide them, right? Okay, are you repairing yourself, right? What stage are you in? Are you still putting yourself back together in terms of your heartbreak of your academic journey, of your trajectory? Are you putting yourself back together of in terms of your your promotion, your tenure decision where it went like terrible, right? And so there was tears that were shed during those testimonios, you know? And it was very raw, it was very powerful, it was very rich to go through them. And so even, you know, the coding, the analysis portion of this entire process was for myself, you know, the after process was was tough. Yeah, I will say that. So I'll move on to the next key finding. In terms of emotional labor and resilience, women faculty of color resisted, you know, hostility created by peers and students and institutional policy. So women faculty of color provide critical mentorship and advocacy, but receive very little institutional recognition. They develop resilience strategies through self-care, cultural affirmations, and community building. Here I have an example quote of a participant who was sharing the news of their promotion, and they went to the bathroom door and just cried to themselves, and then realized that, hey, I can go celebrate, you know? And then they go back out and then they start, you know, celebrating with their colleagues. And, you know, their non-white colleague goes out and says, are you done, Latinas, right? And then she's like, no, I'm not done. I'm standing my ground. Like, and she realizes, like, I'm going to celebrate this for a very long time. Like, this is my moment. Like, you're not here to tell me that I should stop celebrating this, you know? And so that was her way of like being resistant, you know, to that type of like negativity and constraint. And so, and she was within, you know, she was within her community, and so she felt armored, right? Another quote that I didn't list on here, but it was about mentoring students, you know, who reminded her of herself. And even though it adds to her workload, it also like it gives back to her emotionally, and it feels like she needs to, like, if she doesn't do it, then that student won't be able to like have someone like her as a faculty member, right? And so it's like it's definitely a vicious cycle in terms of the emotional labor and the resilience. And so it's such a vicious cycle, as I'm mentioning. But it's such an interesting conversation to have with them and just to discuss, and so deeply layered, right? So I'll go on to the next key finding, which is conocimiento as resistance. So women faculty of color, they create these roadmaps motivated by, for example, lasting parental influence, as well as mentors and other support systems. So by applying the Anzaldúa's conocimiento, women faculty of color, they're able to resist these types of systemic oppressions. They're able to cultivate alliances with other marginalized faculty. They're able to build alliances with faculty from other departments. They're able to build communities with of advocacy, right? Amongst other, whether that's like junior faculty, senior faculty, faculty that are, you know, in rising leadership positions amongst campus, right? And they're also wanting to challenge institutional norms through advocacy, right? And they're overall reclaiming their narratives and intellectual contributions. And so here I have a couple of quotes that that they that they show their strategies of how they resist in terms of external support systems. What do they do? What are the strategies that they utilize via like conocimiento, right? To resist, to keep going, to re-energize, right? One of them is saying, right, like I meditate, I do hot yoga. There was another professor who says like I go get I run, right? Like I'm into marathons. This is what I do. And that is like part of like my constant routine. And then another one was, it's my parents. My parents were are my motivation, right? So there's that like that lasting parental like influence, which is definitely was a reoccurring theme within the participants. So I'll go ahead and move on to some final thoughts. So the experiences of women faculty of color provide crucial insights into the systemic inequities in academia. This research is a call to action. Institutions must do more than diversify faculty. They must create environments where women faculty of color can thrive. By listening to and amplifying these testimonios, we can work collectively, work toward a more equitable academic space. I do have some recommendations in terms of institutional changes that are needed. I believe that there needs to be more support for women faculty of color, that academic institutions must acknowledge and compensate their mentorship for DEI work. There also should be an increase in leadership opportunities for faculty of color, as well as implementing policies that address implicit biases in hiring, tenure, and promotion. And then finally, in terms of a call to action, while systemic change is necessary, there are strategies women faculty of color have found helpful, such as establishing formal and informal mentorship networks, which was something that was, a reoccurring pattern and theme in the testimonios from the participants. As well as documenting and advocating for their contributions in institutional settings, as well as engaging in collective action to challenge exclusionary practices. And that comes to a conclusion. I know that was a little on the short end. I either went a little too quick or that was a little too short. So sorry about that, Humberto.
I think it was brilliant. Very good. Very, very, very good.
Do I stop
Do you
sharing?
hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Good. That's excellent. I took some notes, but let's start with the others first. Wait, yes, because I'm hearing my cell phone. Okay, good. So let's start with other first. If anyone has suggestions, comments, it's very interesting. I have lots to say, but
Can we maybe first close this slides?
oh, to close the slides.
Oh, do I close the slides? Yes, sorry. That's what I was asking. Yes, of course. There we go. Yes. There we go.
Yes, Dirk?
Okay, if no one else starting, I just take the lead. I'll start. Thank you very much. It was very interesting. And well, I never heard about the conocimiento before. So, but it reminded me also on some other Western theorians. So the idea was not totally new to me, but in this I also looked it up while you were talking, and also looked about some books around. This was really interesting. But what I was thinking about was, and I guess this is the idea also of the woman faculty of color. This was new to me from Denmark. It was not new when we talk about diversity and also about workers, so social class or class differences. So the stories you told, the experiences you presented were, as a matter of fact, not new for me, but just with respect to a worker class children, because the same experience in Middle Europe or Northern Europe, it's the same coming, and now we also have the same with migrants, with also difference, much more difference, and also when we go into intersectionalism, I guess also with difference, with more things than not only one, not class, working class, but also maybe female working class, female working class of color, and maybe also Muslim, and so forth and so forth. So it's adding, but it reminded me on the old studies of, and also on my experiences from work, coming from a work class, and of fact, thinking you don't work enough and you don't belong, this feeling of not belonging. And this was familiar with studies of working class children and people, and also academics, I think. And that's, I guess, you can find, especially after the mass university, you have more and more of people who are not come from elite and academic families, and you find, I guess, these more and more. And which now is a backlash, because I guess now the faculties are getting smaller and smaller because they're not needed anymore that much, especially in the critical faculties, humanities, and so forth. But I think I saw some parallels there, and then it reminded me also on where I have in Cornell with the global southern the global southern studies about academia, and I'm not sure, but is it really a new thing, or is it just, not misunderstand me, a cultural other interpretation because of other cultures, places? You have there are other kind of circumstances where there are more at the moment women of color in faculties at the moment, and not that much working class people, because we have we don't. What I want to say is, how does it come that that you don't have class mentioning in it also? Meaning that it's a kind of women of color, and but not a class aspect, for example, in it. Is it adding it, or is it only a totally different phenomenon?
I think there might be a couple of layers to there to unpack. Did you have something to add, Humberto?
Actually, I was about to get into that, because what I could see, and from my perspective, I am also a faculty at the university, and we do have now, by listening to your research, we do have many women in leadership roles. However, we don't have many women of color, and that's interesting coming from a country like Brazil, whose majority of the population are people of color. White people in Brazil, they have become minority, and which is amazing, in my opinion, because it really shows the strength, of the African culture, indigenous culture in Brazil. However, institutionally speaking, it does not reflect the reality outside. So it's like there is a crossfire, there is a clash between culture and institutional reforms and the cultural transformation that they demand, because people also make up the environment, working environment. And we're talking about a place, Sylvia knows that, we're talking about a place where we create knowledge. So what kind of knowledge are we creating in which the majority of the population is not represented in this faculty, right? This is one of the major questions in Brazilian higher education, is the absence of people of color, be them students, professors, faculties, in all of these layers. And what I'm asking, what comes to my mind is that when you have this crossfire between the cultural, the people who work with them, and people who have traditionally carried their own experiences and their own street knowledge, right? Real life knowledge outside from university, and they bring that to the university. So how can we transform that? Being all the university is autonomous, the university is independent, the university can create their own bonds, diplomacy, university agreements. However, we are not yet separated from the mainstream culture that we carry, the traditional, the neoliberal, exclusionary bias that we carry normally, the people carry normally. So it's like, even though institutionally you call for action, institutionally we needed to grant and to transform, perhaps in the policies, internal policies, perhaps with quotas. Here we do have this amazing debate about quotas at university for people of color, for the underprivileged, or people from lower socioeconomic contexts. So, but the idea is, even if we put that to place, we still need to change people's cultures, people's ideas, people's knowledge. And this is what you say. First of all, congratulations, because your research really lives up to its title. You have acknowledged and you have made visible these people's narratives, these women of color's narratives. And this is amazing. You already started doing what you came to do. And then you talked about that. And this is much more interesting. How can an anthropological quest derive to a sociological issue? So it's really interesting how narratives compound a sociological, a collective fact, a collective unfortunate fact, but this is real. We're talking about Brazil, we could be talking about, I don't know, Mexico, we could be talking about Cuba, we could be talking about anywhere, right? And so this is pretty much all I would ask about these layers that Dirk said, is because we also have these individual layers, these collective layers, the cultural layers, the institutional layers, and we do have all these layers that make up one's identity. So it's really, really difficult to like in one afternoon, in one research, to come up with a solution to fight these institutional bias and these barriers. But I believe that you're going to an amazing path. And also I would like Ansal Dua's work. I have never heard.
Oh,
So
she's wonderful.
if
Yes,
if you could send me a little bit of her work, it would be amazing.
absolutely. Thank you.
Andrew?
Hey, excuse me. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for your presentation. The presentation raised interesting themes, and the two questioners or commenters who have spoken already have raised some interesting questions as well. I suppose there are a few places in the world, particularly among richer countries, where people would say that we have designed institutions to be exclusionary, right? Whether it's Denmark or whether it's Sweden or whether it's the United States or France or anywhere else, whether it's in Europe or in Asia, I would think that lots of people would say, we build these institutions, we organize these laws so that they will be inclusive, not so they'll be exclusive. But in fact of matter, you find institutions, you find structures that somehow acquire a certain hidden agency to make sure certain people, to make it very difficult for certain kinds of people, certain types of people, certain classes of people to enter into those structures and to begin working. So where that power comes from, Dirk was talking about classes. I don't think classes are spoken about enough these days, right? Or whether, or Umberto was talking about cultures, people's everyday cultures, people's the values and the meanings of people in everyday lives. How these come to these somehow lead to meanings, actions, agencies existing within structures. Structures come to embody certain kinds of agency, right? And so I find this process fascinating. But also something interesting as well. Okay, so people who are exposed to the fact of exclusionary forces within supposedly neutral democratic structures, people who are exposed to that kind of exclusion, they begin to resist. And it's through their resistance that the character of the structures, that the characters of the institutions becomes clear. Someone who is, an established figure within a certain kind of structure, they probably don't think of themselves as being exclusionary. They probably might, many of them might even say that they're trying to forward the process of inclusion for new groups in society or something of the sort, whether they're women, whether they're, refugees, whether they're new citizens. But in matter of fact, you find these structures, you find these people acting in ways that are exclusionary, right? As that's the fact, right? That's the fact. My university rector wouldn't say that he is, that he is not inclusive in his policies and his actions. He is a he, by the way. The country I live in wouldn't say that laws are designed to function in ways that keep certain people out of the larger society. But the fact of the matter is that they do. That's the way they function, right? And speaking about the kinds of factors that cause this, I think is very interesting. And the fact that this becomes the character of what are supposedly inclusive structures becomes evident in the fact that people have to resist them because they are in fact exclusionary. So just a few comments. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Vesela?
Okay, do you hear me? Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, thank you very much. A very interesting presentation. And of course, this eternal issues about discrimination, racism that we don't want to mention, as a kind of possibility because, until recently in some countries it was forbidden to talk about racism because it doesn't exist. And if we start talking about discrimination, racism, it means as if we invite, the the culture of using these words to be established. And so by avoiding actually talking about this, by avoiding using these terms as if, we are trying to improve society. I'm here, so I have a question here about your methodology. So what kind of theoretical framework you are using is my question. So especially I'm interested in the question about emotions. So I wonder whether you're using Hochschild's theory of emotions because you're mentioning the term emotional labor. And I was thinking that perhaps if you're using this theory, it is a very interesting possibility here to develop a kind of aspect that I don't think is existing, so far in Hochschild's theory. Because the emotion work is actually the act of trying to change, the emotion that you're feeling, the degree and quality, and to do a kind of deep acting to almost, change the emotion that you're feeling, and sometimes, of course, successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully. And so here in your case, at least if if you are using this frame, I thought that there's an interesting opportunity to talk about this kind of faculty of color that are coming from particular culture that is really very emotional. And so here we have had an example, as you have shown us, in which it is not possible to continue the emotion work. So you cannot any longer, tolerate this kind of attitude, where people are creating the situation, a situation that is very, challenging for you, for example, and you cannot just go further and do the emotion work to pretend that there is nothing, wrong with what's going on. But all of a sudden, this faculty, said, yes, I'm going to celebrate, and from now on, I'm going to. So this kind of, challenge of this rule or regulation that you have to do the emotion work, especially if these are, employees of color. So they are obliged to do the emotion work to pretend that perhaps they do not, notice the different attitude that other people have towards them, and that actually everything is fine, it's absolutely normal, while they somehow reject this. So this kind of resistance that you're talking, this is really very interesting. And so this is a different aspect of Hochschild's theory that I don't think that is very much in focus, because so we are focusing on the people that do the emotional labor, and they have to be paid for this because it's really part of the job, So we have, physical labor that's paid. We also have to have emotional labor that is paid. And the focus in the social workers and other people that invest a lot of emotions, and it's not paid, in any case, but it's a difficult thing, so it's a labor. But here we have something else, we have a challenge of this kind of culture and this kind of rule that if you're taking this position, you pretend that everything is fine because you have to be loyal to the organization. If you want to be, for example, a teacher, so you have to behave, you pretend that, be very thankful for, the fact that you are one of, the faculties. So a little bit thoughts about this. I want to ask you if you have anything to say about your method and how exactly emotional labor was qualified, or, in what sense, we can talk about what, I have said here, a challenge of the regulation, of the rule that if you are a person of color, you have to, taking this position means that you have to do emotion work. But if you want to challenge this, so maybe, you can be alienated just because you don't follow the rules. So something along this, line. So do you have anything in particular to say about this methodological issues and conceptual issues? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. I appreciate that comment. I did not use a specific emotional labor theoretical framework as you've proposed, suggested. Actually, the foundation of my original research, I utilized Yoso's community cultural wealth theoretical framework, which specifically recognizes the strengths of underserved populations, and it focuses on the cultural capital of the strength of the strength and the skills, right, of these of the population of underserved individuals, right, in terms of familial, linguistic, navigational resistance, aspirational, cultural wealth, right? And so that is where the emotional labor resistance came from. And so that's the framework that elevated that key finding, essentially. So even though there's not the one that you perhaps suggested or the one that was proposed, but that's where the foundation of where my finding came from. Yeah.
Thank you.
Radha, did you
Yes.
raise your hand?
Yes, yes. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am thinking, because I'm working on emotion alienation, so in terms of law and the state of exception and the whole system, the cultural, the culture, basically, Western culture. So one thing, bell hooks talks about love as resistance. So it means that if this is the view that I am developing into my new book, is that the only thing that can help us is to undermine all these binaries, opposition between a male, female, reason, emotion, and the story goes on because we are internalize this culture of domination. So the only hope that I see is love as resistance. So it means that I do not want to fight something that creates domination. We can go against it with love to undermine the whole system of patriarchy. Through our language, everything is basically, our understanding comes from these dualities. So the only way that I see, although, it is a complex system that we have to deal with. Patriarchy in terms of the whole heterosexual normativity of the system. So the economic system that we have to deal with. You cannot reduce it to gender or class or race. It is more complex. So to me, I would, I adopt bell hooks, love as resistance, and this is maybe help us. This is what I think it may help us. But when you go into a system, individual, it has a very small role, although we want to feel that individualism is great, but individualism is a system that creates domination. It is not about individual's agency. It is about the system of individuality that overpowers the individual. This is what I think we should do.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Andrew?
Yes, thanks. You said that one of your sources, one of your inspirations, one of your sources was Fanon, 1967. I guess that's Black Skin, White Mask. I'm correct. That's one of the common publication dates of an English language translation of Black Skin, White Mask. If that's the case, I mean, is that the Fanon source that you used in your work, that particular one? The reason I'm interested in asking is, of course, Fanon, particularly in that work, describes how structures, institutions have a psychological character to them, have a psychological meaning to them, right? He discusses certain kinds of structures, certain kinds of institutions as neurotic, as psychotic. And he, of course, builds his sense of political resistance upon, psychoanalysis, shall we say, of the social forces at work in given societies. I mean, I think this is, that's a fascinating kind of inspiration from in light of my particular interest. We're talking about the ways in which things are made invisible. We're talking about the ways in which exclusiveness is made individual, which patriarchy is made individual. Kinds of things that Fanon describes as psychoses are made to seem normal. They are not made to seem inherently disease-ridden in some way or abnormal, but they're made to seem they're either made to go away or they're made to look like something that they aren't. Right? So, and of course, the same kind of thing from the early Marx as well, right? In 1844, he hasn't started, which is also a source that you noted. Marx hasn't started talking much yet about class yet, social class yet, in a very structured, coherent kind of a way. But he's talking about the way that people are made to think, people are made to feel when they think they're actually feeling or thinking in some other different kind of a way. So, but thanks again for your presentation. It's brought a lot of interesting questions to up for discussion.
Thank you for those comments. Appreciate that.
Just a few things for short. It's interesting when you arrive at your findings, and all of your findings, actually, all the strategies to navigate these barriers, they have to do with social ties. They have to do with relations of exchange, with the strength of relations of exchange, right? And it seems clear to me that the emotional labor that has to be done, it's not how the female faculty of color would navigate that, but how the institution could how can I say, bring more conscious, transform, this emotional labor of institutional change, of cultural institutional change. This would be the emotional labor that we need to put there, because the emotional knowledge, because what it seems to me is that conocimiento, which is knowledge, right? It's not precisely the knowledge. It's more than that. It's like hacks and necks and ways to dribble and to drift, and to avoid things and to jump an obstacle, to know when to act and to know when to realize and when to say, look, my job here is good. Look what I did. Look what I produced. So you need to do that, and they have with their social ties, with their network, and this is really, really important. There has been loads of research, especially here in Brazil, how these networks, they are critical for survival, critical for navigating social barriers and institutional barriers. I can send you some references later on, but I just remember those.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, all of the findings, most of them were, I mean, you can say this, I mean, essentially push to, all of these social groups, social activities, social hobbies, even if it's like started off as an individual, I'm going to go running, they joined a running group, a running community, right? So it did become a new network for them, right? And so that's where they found this kinship, and that's where they feel welcome. That's where they feel included. And that's what they yearned for. That's what they're not obviously finding in their workspace. And so they're finding a lot more of that support and externally. So that's what they're gravitating towards, even if it's one-on-one in therapy, right? That's still with somebody else. So I also thought that was a very illuminating as well. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I can't find a way to raise my hand. When I have a small, a short time to speak, I would like to say something. Is it possible? Yeah, okay. I'm sorry about this, but I can find the hand. So what I wanted to say is that, first of all, thanks for this presentation. I might say that in Italy, maybe because we are not multicultural society yet, the most important distinction is still among men and women. Our academic body are really full of women. We are the majority, but the power position, of course, are mostly made of men. So this is still the main distinction. But although there is this rhetoric of inclusion in all the institutions, our institutions are strongly exclusive, and the exclusion is quite close, strongly close to the concept of competition. Our university systems are, of course, competitive, of course, because we are in this sort of mental set. I think all of us are, of course, competitive. And what I can't imagine, and it is interesting for this point of view, in this point of view, your research, which is a qualitative research, and is very important. You have gone into these faculties live. You have asked them their experiences, how they could join resistance together with competition. Because what I see right now is that this is really a difficult step to do. As I said, the main differences, the main kind of discrimination in Italy is still between men and women, and of course also the class, let's say, the origin of the person. It is anyway still important, but in such kind of institution, I think that the resistance is really something that we must learn to do. And your work could be, let's say, a sort of starting point, a sort of inspiration to get start with a new possibility, let's say.
I really like that. That's a great comment, Sylvia. I appreciate that. You got my wheels spinning. Thank you. Made a note of that. I think it's Dirk.
Dirk?
Okay. I'm lower my hand also. Pretty interesting thoughts at the moment. I was thinking about, I have to make it a little like you can read it. I was I'm thinking about resilience and the resistance part of it, and how you presented how women try to survive in this environment, in this, let's say, knowledge environment that is specifically an environment that is male dominated. This is white. This is a professional white environment where all these categories, more or less, in this kind of homo academicus, are there to have a kind of power structure and maintain a power structure, and also to resist conscious making, especially conscious making that is not built on this professionalism. But I was thinking about resilience and resistance. Is it more about surviving in this environment? Is it more about how to find solidarity to show what's going on or to break it? because in a lot of theories or a lot of thinkings, we see how to get knowledge, to get conscious about power structures. But the question is it also to break it or just to survive it? Is it to make a revolution? Is it about to change the world, to go to Marx Feuerbach thesis? Or is it only to survive in it and to align in other forms, like align with a marathon group, align with another yoga group to survive it? Or is it about to change the whole thing, to break it down? That was it.
So I think in my study, so I focused on, I interviewed only senior faculty, so they all had tenure. So that was a caveat, right? And so they had a little bit more leverage, right? And so I wanted that to be specific because I wanted to make sure that if I interviewed junior faculty, I didn't want to put them in a position where they were limited to what they could say. They felt vulnerable to not saying certain things or limiting their experiences, right? And so because of that, then they would feel they're not fully putting out their their survival experience, right? And so because of these full tenured or associate/full professors, they're at a point where they're either, I am fully resisting the ivory tower. I have nothing to left to risk, to prove. I am going down without any battle, essentially, right? I can lose it all. I don't care. I have tenure. It's fine. I can go fight a revolution in my department. It's fine if I have no colleagues left or if I'm department chair, whatever, right? So it definitely varied in the testimonios that I did, and it also depended on the discipline, right? It depended on the discipline. It varied so much in terms of the hard sciences, the humanities. It was so interesting to see how much that varied, and because if there was, a ratio of of 1 to 4 in terms of male to female in the department versus a 1 to 2, that also varied much on the experience of how much they were willing to risk and how much they were willing to resist and to stand up for their other colleagues, right? Or how much they were willing to actually, I'm willing to advocate for other people in another department, right? I'm willing to revolutionize for another department because I already have the power in my department, so I have more leverage, So it definitely is interesting. It just varies so much. It just all depends, I can't provide you with a black and white answer. It just all depends. But go ahead if you have a follow-up, Dirk.
That's just a question of solidarity also that was a little bit in the background of me. There is solidarity between the people. There is solidarity that can change something. That was there.
So, oh, sorry, what was that? I didn't catch the last part.
It was the idea of maybe organization of solidarity, which we know from worker unions or something like a social movement or something that's could be coming out of this.
Right. Yeah. And I've seen that informally, outside of this study. I've seen how unionized faculty or unionized academics, they do stand by each other with non-unionized tenured and non-tenured folks. And I've seen that across campus. I do see that. That's outside of this study though, so I can't speak to that in terms of this. Yes, thank you for that. I do see one more hand up.
Michelle Dung, you have the word.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I really liked it. I think it provides a rather unique perspective in that most of the research in sociology and social science in general focused on a more structural approach to racism and gender, in that they look at the like not really power structure, but just in general the social structure and the people in position of power and the women and the minorities in reaction to those structures and people in power. Whereas your study, what I find to be a highlight is that it has a very subjective perspective originating from the people, the faculty themselves, which I found really fascinating, especially with the the entire focus on the like the the strategy and their emotional. I think it's really interesting. And most of all, I guess this kind of study are focused on, say, women in female student or even female high school student, which is more exposed, while you're focused on a tenured faculty. It is fascinating that we could see that even uh, even women and minorities in position really high. I was going to say position of power, but they're still not having. They're having the power, but they're still under oppression, which is really impressive given the human our in terms of humans effort to alleviate this, which is really good. Thank you for that. So I have two questions which I found very interesting in the research. First is this conocimiento. Sorry for the pronunciation. Given that which I presume the subjective perspective is a result of theoretical framework. So I would really like to know more about how what kind of, given the name I presume is about SP. I'm just not going to presume. Please tell more about that. And I would like to know your opinion about how the research, given that it's from a agency perspective, is related to the more traditional perspective of the sociological structural analysis and the other things such as the emotional framework and the more traditional educational framework the other presenters talk about. So that's the two questions. Thank you for the presentation. It's really amazing to see it.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you to kind of reframe, I guess, those two questions in a way where so do you want me to go more into depth of the stages of conocimiento? Is that kind of what you want me to do? Is that what it was? No.
Yes, I would like to hear more about the theoretical framework itself. Yes.
Okay. Yes, I can do that. So yes, I can do that. So the 7 stages of conocimiento basically starts off with I actually need to like pull them all up because I don't have them memorized, and they're actually like just one of them has like a very long name. So just give me 1 second while I pull up my document for that. And then in the meantime, do you mind rephrasing the second question for me?
Yes, in that your research is focused on at least from what I gathered, the emotional and personal experience of the women of colored faculty in higher education system. So how does how does this relate to the more traditional sociological analysis where people usually put more of their effort on how is the structure in the faculty constructed and how that affect the the subjectivity, the woman of color in this regard?
I have to think about that one for a second. But in the meantime, I will go through the 7 stages of conocimiento. So what I did for, as I mentioned, like in the 2 interviews, so I split up the 7 stages of conocimiento, and I first went through the initial stages, right? Which the first stage is called el arrebato. And so this first stage is essentially this initial rupture, right? So this is where the individual goes through a very big crisis, right? So then I would ask, have you ever, gone through a very, large disturbance in your experience as a professor in academia, right? In terms of racism, sexism, where has it manifested, right? In the professoriate. And then in terms of the second stage, it's called nepantla. And so where I believe I refer to myself as a nepantlera, where I acted as a guide, right? And so this is essentially nepantla. Gloria Saldúa refers to Nepantla. Nepantla is as a space between 2 worlds, right? And so it's kind of like you're neither here nor there. I like to think of myself as constantly being in Nepantla, me, myself as an individual, because as I mentioned, I was born in Mexico, but I live in the US and I live in San Diego, and I'm constantly traveling between San Diego and Tijuana. So I'm binational. So I always kind of say I'm neither like from here nor from there. So I'm like in this like kind of borderlands Nepantla space of between. And so when I ask these types of questions of, the second stage of conocimiento, I asked, this was where like it represented about speaking to their agency, right? In terms of asserting how to ways of seeking their agency in their professoriate experience. And their identity and their belonging. So that's kind of like how we captured that. And then the third stage of conocimiento is the coatlicue stage. And this is the inner struggle and fear. And so this is where you go through a lot of despair, self-doubt, and like even like internalized like oppression of some sort. And so this is where you even start to kind of like resist a little bit of like of that like oppression, but you still don't know if you're going to, but you kind of start to like visit it. And so they're perhaps, starting to develop this like activist identity, right? And then the next stage is el compromiso, which is a call to action. And so this is kind of like maybe we were already starting to visit this in the second interview. It kind of depended on the person, depended on our time. These weren't fixed. All of these interviews were fluid in terms of the stages. It just kind of depended on where we were, how we landed, how it felt. They were, they weren't fixated or anything. And so this is where what types of questions did we ask? Did I ask? This was in terms of, I asked questions about, a student mentorship, engaging in activist scholarship, or engaging in you know, advocating on campus, things along those lines. And then the fifth stage is called putting Coyolchuaqui together. And this is about restriction and healing. And so there's actually a legend behind this stage, and this is like an old Aztec legend, and this is about a god and the mother and how the brother killed the sister and broke her into a million pieces, and then she somehow put herself back together, but then she didn't put herself back together in the original form and in all of the original pieces. Yes, she put herself back together, but she wasn't the same, right? So that metaphor is, yes, you're put back together, but you're not the same person after restructuring and after healing, right? So all of these fragments, all of these bits and pieces, you're not the same after being broken, is essentially what it is, right? So it's in this stage where you're learning to balance your personal, your professional, and your activist, if that's what it was, identities, right? And so this was a challenging stage for most of the participants, right? This is where some tears were shed, even on my end, right? It was tough, but it was also a beautiful stage to go through with them. And then the sixth stage is called the blow up. This is where some of the participants, you know, they went through a lot of, not a lot of it, but some of the participants went through some systemic injustices, right? And they needed to or wanted to dismantle oppressive structures within academia. And whether that was challenging their merit or promotion outcome, or a challenge to their departmental structure or bylaws, or you know, COVID procedures, because that was during that, you know, time. And there was definitely, you know, lots of experiences in regards to working from home, and what's the procedure, what's the protocol, and you know, hey, I don't feel comfortable going to campus right now, and things along those lines, in terms of, hey, I need to be wearing a mask, but these students or these faculties don't want to, or things along those lines, where it was just like conflicting. So there was a lot of like of those blow up experiences, right, going on, even after the putting yourself back together. So there was like that back and forth stage. And then the final stage is called the kind of like the new vision, the collective action. And then in this final stage is essentially, it's this transformative final phase where, you know, you're trying to have just, you know, looking at your new, not new, but like this this like liberated mind, right? And an alignment where it's like you're redefining your academic spaces, your personal beliefs, to also go with like future generations, and have them all kind of like fit together, somehow encapsulated. If that makes sense to you all in some ways. And you know, I didn't go through this in my presentation because it's also a lot to just take in. But I do think it's a beautiful framework to know, to go through. I personally love it, and I think it's so iconic and beautiful and unique. And I would more than happy to like share this. I know Humberto, you already want me to like share Gloria and Saldua with you, so I'm definitely gonna share it your way. And I know you repeated your other question already with me, but I already, totally just I went through this, so I forgot it already.
No, don't worry. I think this is a very interesting theory. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate all of the comments and questions. Those were great.
I appreciate everyone. I appreciate you, Gladys, for your work. Thank you very much for this enlightenment. It really takes me back my early ages of sociology when I was reading Mannheim in Sociology of Knowledge. And Mannheim used to say, knowing is discomfort, right? So every new knowledge, everything new that you learn, you are in a discomfortable place because you have to change everything you believe. So you have these steps of a crisis and acceptance. It's an individual pathway that we collectively feel. So this is the most interesting because there is this psychological effect, but at the same time, this collective psychological effect. I would like to thank everyone for being here, especially those who are like midnight, 1 a.m. and tomorrow is Tuesday and you have to work. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
If everyone if anyone wants, if Gladys gives me permission, I can share her email with any one of you. And if you please could send me the work from Ansaldua,
Yes.
her works, because I am really looking forward to read them.
Absolutely.
And this is pretty much this. So thank you everyone for being the first session of 2025. Our next session is on March the 28th. Is on March the 28th, our next session, Talking the Nation session. And I hope you have a nice week of work and happy Carnival to all of you. And here in Brazil, we are going to get drunk and to go to the beaches and enjoy Carnival. So please do not await no emails, no calls, no WhatsApp until after Carnival because I will be off as a good Brazilian would.
Good.
Enjoy.
Enjoy. Cheers.
Okay, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Goodbye.
care.
Good night.
Thank you. Umberto, when is the 28th? What time is it? The next one.
Let me just check here just a moment, very quickly. Maybe because it's here. It's here. It's on the 20.
Eastern time, please. Yes.
Yes. Breaking barriers. Here, role of international labor, India. It's going to be
4:30.
4:30 in the morning.
8:30 a.m. GMT.
No, but in New York time, what time is it going to be? Because on that day,
In New
28
York,
and 29, I am
4:30.
in conference. What
It-
time? 4:30 in the morning?
4:30 a.m.
So
4:30 a.m.
okay, 4:30. Because I
Well,
have
that's
to go
it.
for 2 days
It's big
conference. That's
to be
fine.
international, right?
I can make it because I am go to Queen University, so I have to go by 7 o'clock, so I can make it, I think, by 4:30 a.m.
Here is
Thank you.
5:30 a.m. So let's wake up earlier.
For sure. The life of intellectual, it means that early morning. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Yes.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.